I don't see me. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Bill Graham on Model Railroading Live, the #1 model railroading show in the world. Tonight, who's Big Bill talking to? We have a special guest with us, Eric Smith, the editor and of the Dispatch's Office, official journal of the Operations Special Interest Group magazine. And we'll get into him right in a few minutes, but I need to do some homework. Johnny's Train Talk Show will be airing November 19th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's Johnny's Train Talk Show. That's where you, the community, can come into this like we're sitting here now. If you have a webcam or and good internet, and you can bring and share, brag and share and brag, and bring everything that you're doing. If you have any questions in regards to what's going on your layout, you have a question, you're troubleshooting something, come to Johnny's Train Talk Show. Go right on down to the general store, pull up a chair, pull a soda pop out of the ice box, and sit around the checkerboard and talk model railroading. That's the 19th of November at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then on the 21st, we're going to have the Railroad Empires, How We Build Them. That's going to be with Robert Holman and Andy Crawford. They're going to be discussing commercial track as well as hand-laid track on layouts. So that should be an interesting topic. This is the second season for the Railroad Empires, How We Build Them. And that will be on the 21st, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All the shows on Model Railroading Live, the #1 model railroading show in the world, are at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have, hey, Bill, it's Amber. Amber, how are you? How are you, hon? I want to give a big shout out, excuse me for 1 minute, to my favorite granddaughter in the whole wide world, Grace too, Lexus as well, but Amber Perez. I want to tell you guys something. Eric, I have to share this with you. My Amber makes the best chocolate pudding cake in the whole wide world. She does. She just makes the best chocolate pudding cake. I don't know where from that. Amber, how are you? Anyway, getting back, tonight's guest is Eric Smith. He's the editor-in-chief of the Dispatch's Office. It's official journal of the Operations of Special Interest Group. Eric, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining us and taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thanks for having me, Bill.
Quite welcome, quite welcome. Tell us a little bit about the Dispatch's Office. For people who aren't familiar with the OPSIG, what is OPSIG?
OPSIG, or Operation SIG, is a NMRA recognized special interest group. We focus on operating your railroad in some sort of a realistic manner. When you get past the point of running your train around in circles with it really just for display, that's kind of where we step in to say, you know what, trains don't just run in circles. They have jobs. They go, they move freight, they move passengers. And it basically adds a deeper level of operations other than just running things in circles. You got a building there on your railroad, but what's it do? Why is it there? What is it? What cargo did it get? What cargo did it generate?
Mm-hmm.
How does that cargo move from, maybe one point on your railroad to another point on your railroad? How does it move from your railroad literally to somebody else's railroad, where you hand them the car and say, okay, this car is going to this industry on your railroad? How does it, are you really moving the traffic to and from? It basically lets you get past the open house mode, which is, seeing trains run is great fun. We all like it. But there's a point at which you have to say, why are these things on my layout? Why do I have these buildings? What's the reason for these trains moving? And so through a mix of the dispatcher's office covers a wide variety of topics, including operations in history. How did the Santa Fe move produce? How did we have that particular issue you got there is about the the iron ore fields up in Minnesota. The fact that they still haul ore out of the mines down to a boat, dump it onto a boat, sail the boat down to the steel mills down near Chicago, because it's still more efficient than hauling it all the way on a train.
Right.
In fact, something you would have thought that, things are much more efficient. It's like, no, it's actually more efficient to put it on a boat. And so that's the sort of thing that, that particular gentleman named Jeff Otto had modeled on his railroad. And it's still an industry that's still there. It's obviously Canadian National has taken it over now, but they're still doing the same thing. So it's just a whole mix of things, between the prototype articles and then different schemes for, everything from simple, okay, you're taking your train from here to there. Each time you see an industry, if they have 2 cars, you put 2 cars. Very simple schemes to very complex ones that mimic a particular day on a particular railroad in a particular town. That this train came by at 10:03 a.m. and if it didn't come by, well then, everything else got thrown out of whack. And there's there's levels of operation along the way. We kind of celebrate all of them and help people get into that part of the hobby.
Right. For guys who are joining us late or the video started up late, I just want to let you know that we're talking with Eric Smith. He's the editor of Dispatch's Office, the special interest official journal of the Operation Special Interest Group. This is the magazine. They also do digital as well, but this is the magazine that they publish. I'm a member of it as well and get this magazine as well. And they got a lot of interesting articles. So we're speaking with Eric Smith here, the editor. How long have you been the editor of this magazine now?
I'm starting my 4th year as the editor, with the January issue. That's actually, take that back. With the October issue, that started year 4.
And is it basically a volunteer?
Yep. Yeah,
it is.
It's all volunteer. The people who write the articles are volunteers. People that proofread. We do pay a publishing house to actually print the magazine, of course, but otherwise, everybody involved in the magazine and all the board members of the Operation SIG are all volunteers.
Right, and when was SIG OpSig officially? When did it come into being?
It's been over. I believe it's over 30 years old now. It's one of the older ones. Our first issue, let me tell you, we have all of it as part of membership. We have all the issues going back to the very first one. The very first issue was in 1990, December or June of 1990.
1990. Wow.
So, now the interest group may have existed prior to that, but the first issue of the Dispatcher's Office was June of 1990.
Well,
basically not much more than a newsletter that got mailed out, probably cut and paste by hand, as it looks like. So predates a lot of different things, talking about programming on Commodore, IBM PC. They're very old, but still doing computerized operations even at that point. So
really. Now, this was formed by a group of model railroaders that wanted to enhance their operation as well as introducing operations to the general model railroading communities. Too far off on that?
Nope, that's exactly it. It's gone through some. There were some gaps in when we had the issues, but ever since, just looking here, There was a gap between 92 and 97 where it sort of, the newsletter kind of stopped publishing. This was before I was a member. But then in 1997, Bill Jewett was actually in the same model railroad club as I was growing up. He took it back over as the editor, kind of got it restarted, and it's been running ever since.
Okay. Well, we're getting a lot of questions on, just so you guys out there know, you can go to their website at www.opsig, that would be opsig.org. And their membership dues are, they publish, what do you publish? 4-ish digital, printable?
Yeah, we do 4 issues a year. We do them every quarter, like clockwork. So January, April, July, and October. And you can get a digital membership for just $10 a year. It's a high quality PDF and it's professionally published. And in addition, as a member, you get access to the entire back catalog of all the old issues. We just recently added that to the website just as a benefit of membership. So we want to really get more, you can go back and see some of the older articles about some of the various layouts. Some of the things we're doing, they're timeless, right? It doesn't matter what you're modeling or, well, it's a DCC engine with all the sounds and everything. Well, operations are still kind of the same.
Yeah.
A lot of the concepts have been the same ever since I learned how to do it back, a long time ago. So
Right. And this is the standard hard copy magazine, if you would receive it, which is what I'm holding in my hands now, is for the USA is $25.
Right.
For Canada is $35, and everywhere else, all over the world, in some parts of China, is $45.
Yeah.
And the electronic magazine is in a PDF file download. It's $10 per year, US, Canada, and everywhere else. And I have to say, Eric, this is a well put together, very nice magazine. Pictures very easy to read.
Since that issue that you've got there, we've actually kind of refreshed the design, and so it's even better now. The other thing is, if you do get everybody gets access to the digital issues. So if you're getting a print, you'll get the digital in addition. So you can always have that at your fingertips if you need to look something up or share it with a friend or something. So
right, and it's well put together, and the stories are written by the model railroaders themselves. Correct.
I try not to write any of the articles. I just tweak them a little bit, fix spelling errors and things like that. So
Human City Junction Heat says, I cannot figure out where on the website to sign up as a member.
opsig.org/join. Right now, one of the things that the site did not have was an online registration. However, I'm actually working on that. If you go to opsig.org/join on the side, there's a link to join us. If you're not logged in, and there's a membership form to fill out, and then you can send your money by PayPal to the address on the form.
Yeah, there you go.
But within the next couple months, we will have an online sign up and instant checkout with PayPal. Just working on that right now, but that's underway.
Yeah, just to give the community out there a heads up on YouTube. YouTube had some minor difficulties earlier this evening. We ourselves, I know that Sparky and a couple of other people out there trying to do their live streams earlier may have had some difficulties. We found out through YouTube that they had some minor glitches, and it was tough for us to get on as well. And so that may have caused some disruption in programming and getting out your content tonight. So it was affecting everybody across the board. So we're here tonight with Eric Smith, the editor of the Dispatch's Office, the official journal of the Operations Special Interest Group. And we're just going over the magazine, how well put together it is. And you were saying that the modelers themselves send in the articles that they want to. And what type of articles? It's not a how to build a railroad type of an article. Am I correct?
No, in fact, there are other journals. I mean, the Layout Design Special Interest Group is probably one of the better known ones on how to build the layout. But
Right.
what we need to do, to a point, there is, when you're first designing the layout, if you are going to be doing operations, there is a way to design it for operations from the start. People will come back later and try to retrofit operations. So from a certain point of view, LD-SIG and OPSIG do go hand in hand. But once you've got the layout built, then it's, other than sharing it with other people, that's kind of where we can step in and help make it a more realistic operation or add some operational elements to your railroad. But no, we definitely stay away from how to build it, how to build bench work, it's like do the electronics, not all of that stuff. Somebody else is already covering it. Our focus is on operations. So every article that we publish has to, I mean, that's kind of the one requirement, is it's got to have an operations focus. If you want to tell me a little bit about the layout, okay, well, it's a modular layout, that's fine. A little bit of background's fine, but the bulk of the articles is about how do I operate my railroad.
Right.
We had one that was a tiny little, 2 foot by 8 foot railroad. Great. We had one that's a, massive, the one there with Jeff Otto, he has a massive basement. I think it's well over 1,000 square feet, if not pushing 2. It doesn't matter. You can, no matter how big the railroad is, there is something you can do to operate it in a realistic manner. So.
Yeah. I mean, I find it, I do. Mystic Southern Railway says, so for your membership, you get a print quarterly, and it's basically all about ops?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Now, in addition, there are member benefits. Obviously, right now, in the middle of a pandemic, there's not a lot of operating events, but one of the other things we do help put together is and promote our operating events. Any other year, pretty much every weekend or anywhere around the country, you could find an event going on.
Right.
These, we jokingly call them ops till you drop, where you do a session on Friday night, 2 or 3 on Saturday, 1 on Sunday, and then you go home and collapse. It's just right now with the pandemic, there are some people operating. There are other people who have figured out how to do all remote operations. There's a guy I know in Virginia who's got on the front of each train, he has a wireless camera. He has operators calling in from all over the country who are running the trains on his railroad. And he's the boots on the ground to go, fix things or uncouple things and so on. So,
well, we just had, we were in touch with a gentleman, Marty, who lives in Australia, and he recently had a remote operations with a gentleman in Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
He did
I had a guy from Canada running on my railroad, and I ran on his. It's all just
right.
A little bit of technology is amazing,
isn't it?
When it works with it.
When it works.
But yeah, the magazine is the primary. It's sort of the one tangible benefit. The rest of the things are to help members get in touch with other members and promote events and
right.
So.
Sparky 107 wants to know if I could show one of the articles in the magazine. I must say that this magazine is well put together. This article is from the April issue. It's the Mesabi Northern Ore Operating, and it's written by the Jeff Otto, 10 years with the CNW and up, and he goes on to, just in the way the magazine is laid out, capturing the flavor of ore railroading, functional plans, capturing the scene, and he has photographs that accompany this, which I think is absolutely. I mean, it's worth it. It's worth it. It's worth the money. It really is. It really
Well,
is.
we like to think so.
Yes. No, I agree. I think this is the OR doc and everything.
Yeah,
And
that OR doc, that picture doesn't even
I'm
remotely
sure it
cover
doesn't.
that particular OR doc. Each track, if I remember right, will hold. He has 2 docks. Each track, there are 4 tracks on each dock, and each track will hold 35 cars. So these are just massive ore docks right in the middle of the railroad. And the job I had was to work up in a yard called Proctor, which is a town in Minnesota, to essentially assemble the trains and send them down to the dock to be loaded. So these 60-car ore trains would come into Proctor. We would break them up based on the type of ore, and then send down 35-car trains to the dock to be unloaded, just nonstop. that was my job on the session. Massive.
How long did it take to do operations on this for an evening?
I think he could run sessions as long as 6 to 8 hours.
Wow.
The event, it was either a 3 or 4 hour session, and so he could just keep going basically. So.
Well, each section of the article is balancing operations, job sequencing, and simplifying operations, which I think is really good. He goes on to talk about gathering and switching ore, billing. East is east and west is north. I guess that's performance considerations, turnouts, and magnet controls. So he does get into a lot, and there's a picture of apparently his layout design.
Yep.
What it is and how he does it and everything. So, and someone says, are there advertisements? Yes, there are advertisements.
Yeah, we have a very small number of ads. I mean, we're not talking model railroader level of ads. We have, I believe, 6 or 7 advertisers, maybe 8. And so as a percentage of the entire issue, each issue is about 40 pages long. I would say no more than about 2.5 pages total spread out through the issue are ads. Those just help defray the cost of the publication. I mean, we're not in it to make money. We break even or a little bit better is what we shoot for. So this is not an advertising
venue.
Right. I mean, we're happy to take some ads, but we try to limit it. Right.
You want more for the operations space for the articles.
Exactly. And it also helps keep the dues down.
Right. On the $10 digital, are there ads in the digital?
Basically the digital and the print are exactly the same format. So we literally take the PDF that goes to the printer and put it up for download. I mean, it's that good a quality. So it's an exact copy of what gets printed. It's just I've been getting the digital as long as it's been available. I find it easier to hold on to them. I've got the entire folder of them. Other people like to have the print. We're about 50-50. Half the people are getting print, half are getting digital.
And we spoke earlier and what I love about it is you have like transportation function 7, release of a loaded car, and it goes into,
Yeah, that's a long-running series that Eric Heiser has been working on. We have part 8 or part 9 going into the January 2021 issue, talking about all of the people involved in moving freight. In his case, he was focused on the Santa Fe Railroad in the 50s. It was kind of the main time frame. So.
And I'm telling you, it's just an amazing. When I first saw this, I was a little bit. I was a little bit overwhelmed on the content of it, trying to read it. And I know I would get the magazine. I said, I have to read this. I have to read this. And then one day I picked it up, and I started reading it, and I was so enthralled by it and so interested. I went back and grabbed all the other back issues and started reading.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems, that operations has gotten a bad name for being too complicated. There are some railroads that run a very complicated structure and lots of rules and lots of things you have to know, and that can be intimidating if you're just getting started. But the vast majority of railroads that do operations are very welcoming to new people. All right, they'll, if you go to go on a session, you're going to get paired with somebody who understands how it works. The hosts, I mean, at the end of the day, we're a bunch of grown-ups playing with plastic toys.
There you go.
The idea of getting, and people have, people want to focus more on the operations or the, one particular aspect. That's fine, but the railroad owners need to be welcoming to new people. And that's the vast majority are. I've run into a few that are not. Even as somebody who's been doing operating sessions for literally decades, for them to basically talk down to me, treat me poorly, I'm like, well, okay, I'm never coming back here again.
Right, exactly.
It basically adds a social aspect to model railroading. Building stuff, maybe you have a few people who help you build, but the idea that, I mean, there are people who will go hundreds or thousands of miles to go run on a railroad, to go operate a railroad. There are sessions, as I said, in a normal year, you could go every week to a different city with another set of operating sessions. We host, I help coordinate one here in Indianapolis. In a normal year, we rotate with the Detroit area, Cincinnati, and then the Fort Wayne area. And so every spring and fall, you can go to one of those four. And then we just rotate around year to year. Obviously, the pandemic has sort of
put a damper on it.
Put a damper on that. But like I said, it adds the social aspect, and it also adds a thinking aspect to it.
Yes.
Watching trains go around and around in a circle, well, you're just watching them go. But the minute you have to say, okay, and we're not even talking about puzzles here, but the idea that I've got 5 cars in my train, I have instructions as to where each one goes. I need to figure out, okay, well, I need to pull these 2 off and, swap these 2. I'm going to have to put these over here on this other track temporarily. It adds a mental challenge to it that, just like any physical activity helps your body, mental activity helps your brain. And as model railroaders tend to be an aging population, myself included, having that extra mental stimulus is a great aspect. So you add all those things together, the social aspect, that puzzle aspect to it. I mean, it's a great part of the hobby that I think a lot of people miss out on because they think it's too complicated, and it just is. I mean, it doesn't have to be. So,
well, it's not that it's too complicated. It's just that you never did it before.
Right. It's one of those things. Once you get somebody into it, if they've got it, have a good experience, they'll keep coming back.
Oh, I agree 100%. I have a question. 107 wants to know, can we as YouTube channels advertise in the magazine? It might be a way to get the last page full and our names out there and a bit of revenue for the magazine as well as us.
I'd be happy to talk to you. If you email editor@opseg.org, that comes right to me.
Okay. And he says, Mystic Southern Railroad says, as long as they aren't pharmaceutical or Ford or Chevy ads, I'm good.
No, the companies that advertise are companies that we're happy to have. Rapido Trains, who's putting out some of the nicest, the best models out there these days. We have Fast Tracks. We have Daylight Sales that makes a lot of the custom clothing that people have for events. NCE advertises with us. A couple other ones. Streamline Backshop that does a lot of the DCC sales and installations. And there's a couple others that are slipping my mind right now. But like I said, if it's railroad related, again, we don't want to turn it into an advertising machine. That's not the
Right.
point. The point is to help with the expenses. And so a few ads here and there don't bother anybody.
Human City Junction says, you mentioned being part of the NMRA. But
let me clarify that. NMRA recognizes the Operation SIG as a special interest group. We're listed up on the NMRA website. However, while we certainly would encourage you to join the NMRA if you wish, that is not a prerequisite for joining the Operation SIG.
right. Well, he goes on to say, and then you mentioned being welcome to newbies, and then he goes to say that one does not seem to go with the other.
Oh, being in the NMRA and being welcoming to people?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's a whole nother conversation that
Yes.
I don't want to have.
I agree.
It's NMRA has some image issues that they are working on. I think that we are, we're a smaller group. Obviously, we're not as big as the NMRA. We've got about somewhere in the 1,400 to 1,500 people who are members of the OPSIG. It's one of the larger special interest groups out there. But we don't have a lot of the things that go along with NMRA, a lot of the politics and so on. We just want people to run their trains. We want to help you learn how to do it. We want to encourage you to, no matter how big your railroad is, run your trains, give your trains a reason to exist.
Exactly right. And I think to highlight what you said earlier about in regards to welcoming. I have been on a few operations sessions, and I have to tell you that being involved in it has always been an exhilarating experience. It's always hard to come into in any kind of group, and whether it's joining the local church softball team or whatever. You got to get yourself in there. But I've always found that whenever I came into an operating session that was established for a while, and you walk in, and you're always greeted with enthusiasm, and it's always been a nice feeling. Come back, and making additional friendships.
Right.
And stuff like that. And so I always find it. I know that. I know I've related this story before, but I used to work for the Transit Authority, and it's the commuter subway system in New York City. And I remember I was invited to my first op session, and it was an N-scale layout in New Jersey, and I was a bit apprehensive. And my wife said to me, "What are you getting so uptight about?" And I was like, "Well, I never operated before, and I don't know these guys, and I don't want to." Screw things up. And she quietly reminded me that I operated $2 million per car, and that this was a lot smaller and a lot more, sustainable and won't break as easy.
Yeah. And if the car gets rolling away, you just put your finger down and you can stop.
Yes. And it was, so when I got there and I was designated, because I was the new guy, so it was based on seniority, and I had the lowest job on. I had to just bring 2 trains and 2 put-ins basically of freight car. And then when I brought the first train up, and I said to the yardmaster, "Where do you want this?" And he tells me, "Put it behind this signal over here." And I said, "Then what do you want me to do?" And he goes, "Oh, just wait for me to call you, and then I'll switch them out." And that's when the light went in my head, went off, that little 10-watt dim bulb. And I said, "Wait a minute, I used to do this for a living." And I immediately went back to the crew room he had and took my shoes off like I used to do, put my feet up on the chair, and had coffee and ate all the donuts.
Yeah, most railroad owners who are doing operating sessions are doing it because they want to be social. So
yeah, absolutely. I find it to be thing. My good friend Frank DeLauro, my cohort recently retired. Frank DeLauro is. She never saw me operate. You're right. My wife never did see me operate, but she knows me. So there. Johnny will post a link to this after the show, Sparky. Yes, he will. Absolutely. We'll put it all in the description below and stuff. And if you'd like, I think I still have your email. I will email you everything that you need. Hi, Bowling Hogger is here. Hi, Big Bill and everyone. Thank you so much. For you guys out there, we're talking to Eric Smith, editor of the Dispatch's Office, the official journal of the Operation Special Interest Group tonight. What was the book that you guys published?
We've actually published 2 books. The first one is out of print now, but the current one is called the Compendium of Model Railroad Operations. I think if you've got your issue there, there's an ad for it. It's also up on the website, but basically covers sort of soup to nuts on how to do operations, all the different types, all the different, a lot of the different. I mean, obviously there's variations on a theme, but there's I'm just trying to find it here. They put a lot of work into that a number of years ago. 310. It's a hardback book, 310 pages to everything. We talked before about the design, and that is something you really have to think about if you're going to do operations. So you've got to have a little bit of a thought in what are you going to do with your railroad if you're going to do operations. For instance, one of the common things that comes up is staging yards, right? If you think of your model railroad as a stage, where actors come on from one side, they do something and they leave. If you think of your model railroad that way, well, you've got trains that are basically passing through your section of the railroad on their way somewhere else. They might not stop, they might stop. But one of the jokes we make is if you think you need, if you have N staging tracks, you always really need N+1. You can really never have enough, to simulate that traffic going through. I mean, I have the railroad I'm building, I have 8 staging tracks at either end of the railroad, and I'd like to have 12, but that's there's only so much space.
Only so much is right.
But that's something available. It's $39.95. There's a link on the OPSIG site on how to order it. It's a great resource.
Yeah, I found it to be a great resource and a great reference book. Mine is a little dog-eared and folded over pages and stuff like that. It's just that when you think if you know what you figure, well, I know how to operate and I know about operations. Then you get the newest issue of your magazine. You're like, oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
Like, oh, okay. That's pretty cool. Do you yourself, Eric, have an HO scale or N scale layout?
I have an HO scale layout that I'm working on. It's about maybe halfway done. You can get from one end to the other up a helix, and I still need to build a peninsula to really add in all of the switching areas that I want to do. Right now it's a little bit dull, but it's a start.
No, I hear on my layout there's I'm point to point, but what I've been told by the gentleman who helped me, Bill Baronic, who designed the layout, says you have to remember that big in operations, Mr. Baronic. He said you got to remember that your layout is a part of a national railroad, and just have your trains come in, and then there's a reason, why you want them and what they're doing. And one of the things he told me, because I'm a point to point, like I, originally would start in the staging yard and then I would switch out, as I went around. And he said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. He says, bring your trains all the way in the yard, classify them, and then send them out.
That's certainly one way to do it, but whatever combination of things you want to do, you may have some trains that never touch a yard; they simply pass through. You may have trains that only pick up cars at yards. You may have locals that only work in certain parts of it. You know, not every train needs to get broken up. So it's, and what you said, every real railroad is point to point.
Yeah.
Right? You know, whether it's the BNSF going from point in Chicago to Los Angeles, well, it doesn't go in a loop, right? Now we have to make some adjustments because we can't build a 2,000-mile railroad. You know, the idea that, okay, well, when it comes into this end of staging, it automatically comes back to the other, you know, it turns itself around and it's ready to go the other direction, right? That's not something the real railroad has, but it's a, you know, there are some compromises we have to make, you know, as much as you'd like to have, you know, Proviso Yard or you know, North Platte running on your railroad, probably not going to fit, you know, so you selectively compress, you pick out the things you want to model, and, you know, always beg for more space.
What was the question I wanted to ask you in regards to, oh, since the pandemic had started and we're in this, have you guys developed a YouTube channel?
Yeah, we have, it's like youtube.com/C/Operation SIG. There's a link on the OpSig website to it. We, back during the early days of I think back in April, actually it was right by Easter time, so it would have been April. I've been doing these all, you know, with my full-time job. I've spent, you know, hours on Zoom calls, and it just occurred to me, well, shoot, why don't we do one for, you know, Operation SIG?
Right.
Started one just on a whim, you know, with almost no notice, and we still had 40 people show up to talk operations.
Great.
And since then, we've sort of settled into a schedule about every 2 weeks. We have either one or two speakers. About once a quarter, we'll do a Q&A, sort of an open Q&A forum. And pretty much on a regular basis, we're maxing out our Zoom subscription at 100 people, and then we'll get, you know, just like your channel, we'll get hundreds of people who will watch the replays.
Right.
So, that's sort of our, because in the past, OpSig really does not have any public events other than helping to coordinate activities at the national, you know, the national convention, you know, the NMRA convention. There's really been no interaction between people. And now we found that this is you know, it's a great way to get people together. And we'll probably keep doing it even after the pandemic is, you know, when the pandemic is over, just as another, and we keep these open to the public. So you can come in and learn about, you know, whatever topic somebody wants to present on that week. So those are all out on our OpSig or on our YouTube channel.
I have to tell you, Eric, that I find this whole thing, it's interesting. Mesabi Northern Ore Operations on the front cover. When you open up this thing on the inside, it says front cover. It's a great northern mine turn is a great northern mine turn is placing empties on one of the empty tracks at the Harrison Mine and Northwalk, Minnesota on Jeff Otto HOCL Mesabi Northern Railroad. The engine will then run around to our left to pull loads from the mine. Empty tracks are normally built on a grade so that mine personnel may gravity roll cars as needed for loading under the tipple for operation convenience. Jeff built the tracks level so operators don't have to tinker with unrealistic artificial brakes and forget them and derail cars. Just in that little paragraph alone makes you want to turn to the page and
well, I don't know if I can share my screen with you or not, but I have a couple.
If you see the share underneath,
if this will work.
There you go.
These are some other pictures of Jeff's railroad. That ore dock there. Oops. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. Each one of those ore trains that come down are 35 cars long. There's 4 tracks on each one of these 2 docks. So you're talking 280 cars on the ore dock, when it's full. So he's got these big, I think they're called Yellowstone engines that are doing the hauling up and down the hill. But that was just one of there's a couple other pictures here.
That is some layout. You operated on that layout?
Yeah, I got to operate on that a number of, it was last year. But lots of Great Northern power, the old big steam.
That's that last one was the cover of the.
Yeah, that was on the cover. So, like I said, all the pictures are from the author. Who's kind enough to take those and put them in. But so yeah, we got all sorts of people contributing articles from all different eras. His was quite the layout.
Mystic Southern Railway, he has a question. He wants to know, when we just talked about this earlier, but he came in. Do you have a layout, and what railroad do you model?
I do have a railroad. It's under construction. We call it the Plywood Pacific right now, but it's primarily Canadian Pacific, in and around the Twin Cities, Minnesota. Lots of traffic passing through to places that may or may not really get traffic, but hey, it's my railroad. So, and there will be industries, towns that when I lived up there off and on, that probably don't have as many rail served industries as I'll have, but hey, I need places to switch cars. So
there you go. Do you find that since you've been, do you think operations is something that's is in catching, basically people are doing it more and more often? Or is it something that people still poo-poo, like, oh, I just want to run my train, which there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But do you think it's right?
I think there are some people who poo-poo it because they haven't been to a good session, or they look at something and it's talking about timetable and train order. It's too complicated. They don't want to do it. Okay, that's fine. But just the best thing we can say is that's one type of operations. There is an entire world of different types of operations with, whether it's signaled, whether it's, Mother May I operations. Okay, you can go from here to here. There's car cards, there's switch lists, there's simple, swap and exchange systems. I've seen some. Well, there was somewhat critical article back in. I actually held on to it from one of the online magazines, basically criticizing operations about how it's too complicated. It doesn't sell, and I think one of the things that I keep it handy just as a reminder that operations doesn't have to be complicated. I did a section for NMRAX about you can do operations with just having an order of trains, having an orderly way that you move the trains across the railroad.
Right.
If you're doing a loop, well, why, where do the cars move from?
Right.
Oh, well, I can take them from here to here, and I can replace these cars. That's operations.
Right.
Now, I wouldn't fly 1,000 miles to run on that, but it at least gets you the idea that there's more to it than just running in a circle.
Right.
And the thing to remember is that people who have what's called operations-focused railroads can still flip a switch typically and turn them into open house railroads where the trains just keep running. In my case, I don't really have that ability, but because I've got enough I'll have enough trackage. I can keep trains running. I can just run them end to end.
Right.
Because the idea is people do like seeing trains go. They like seeing, people's modeling skills. But watching an operating session for the general public is not exciting. I mean, there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of very slow and deliberate movements. That's the part that I enjoy, but it's boring to watch. So I think in general, operators are aware that what we do when we're not showing off the railroad might look boring, but there's a method in the madness. There's a reason that the trains are going from here to here. There's these cards that go with it that tell me what to do and why is it going here. And I think once you get into that, I think it makes a little bit more sense. It's less intimidating. And again, you just start small. That's the big thing.
Yeah. I think that's genuine. And I also think that, I think here at Model Railroading Live, we've, in the last couple of shows that we've dedicated with Tommy Clemensky and John Farrington, small layouts, big opportunities, where we talked exclusively about operations and how important. Tommy's a big operations guy, and he breaks it down, like if you have, starting your train up and then simulating having your conductor walking to the switch to throw the switch. It gives it time, it gives it purpose, and I think that's something that I find intriguing. The best part about operating is that the weather is always 72 and sunny.
Yeah, exactly.
And I never have to worry about the snow, the rain, or the sleet, or dogs, or people, or graffiti, and stuff.
Well, we have a dog, but he's pretty friendly. So
well, I'm just talking about the wild dogs in the yard,
Yeah.
Kent has a question. He wants any tips or resources for early railroading ops or track plans around the 1900s to the 1920s.
If you're looking for track plans, the main places for track plans would be Model Railroader has a huge track plan database. The other place you can go for that sort of thing is ldsig.org. The layout line. They have a number of layout plans, and there are people there who will help you design one. As far as that particular era, as I said, we don't have track plans up. I mean, some of the people who have written articles have their track plans in the magazine, but I would typically run to trains.com, the Model Railroader site, and then go to the track plan database. Really, that you can pretty much, I think, use any. I mean, most of those railroads are going to be single tracked. Pretty much it's going to be steam, so you're going to have water towers and small sidings and locations, short trains, short cars. But I think you could pretty much adapt any track plan. Really, what guides the track plan is your space. If you want to put one of the guys I know up in Michigan used to have this big, fairly modern branch line, triple deck railroad. He got tired of it and built a ON3 narrow gauge railroad in the same space.
Yeah.
That would be it's a very large ON3 railroad because he had the space.
Right. Where was that?
Larry Burke, the Clinch Valley.
Yes.
He had a great railroad. I've actually stolen some of his ideas, but now was the first one that came up when I'm looking at his track plan on Model Railroader. His used to be a triple deck, and now he just has a single deck. So, but it's in roughly the same physical space. It's just a single track now. Single track main with small industries and so on. So I think his was in that was in the November 2020 issue, actually. So, but
someone wanted to know about your layout. They asked a question. Do you run on your Pacific plywood there? Is it diesel or steam that you're going to be?
I'm modern, pretty much all modern. So it's heavy, 6-axle diesels, Canadian Pacific, BNSF, UP, CN, because those all run through the Twin Cities. Amtrak, even though Amtrak will probably not survive, but it'll keep running on my railroad. I have Via Rail coming down from Canada, which doesn't really happen, but hey, it could.
It could.
We have a North Star commuter train that runs up in the Twin Cities. So yes, it's all. You can see it such as it is at northstarsub.com. That's the website for it. You can see what I've built. And again, it's all brown. There's no scenery yet. Still being built. But we have actually had operating sessions on it. So.
Oh, good. Very good. Human City Junction says, I wish there was a moderator in the chat to post links. Well, unfortunately, payroll came and we couldn't make the checks. So everybody just decided to stay home tonight, Heath. I do apologize. We couldn't pay everybody this week due to no funds. No funds. So we couldn't get a moderator to come in for the money that we pay. And we'll try to correct that next time. But I do
on YouTube.
do apologize for that, but we will put it in the description link, all the stuff for OPSIG and the Dispatch's Office magazine. Once again,
I put a link to my railroad out in the YouTube chat. It's very weird to see me on that screen and on this screen. So, to people asking, I use Digitrax DCC on my system.
Right.
And I'm also using stuff from, we have JMRI hooked up using RR Circuits products, their Motorman and their Watchman boards. Those things are great. So we have detection running, so I can see the trains moving around the railroad. A lot of fun. A little bit extra money, but it's definitely worth it.
What is I always ask this, what is the most favorite thing about modeling railroad?
The favorite thing? Oh, I don't know, anymore it's like explaining the hobby. It's like, you do what? And sort of getting that surprised look of, yes, I play with toy trains in my basement, and I've built, I show people a picture of a Helix, which is, the one I built is certainly nothing, nothing remarkable or anything, but people look at that, eyes bug out. How long did that take you? A couple of weeks, It's just kind of funny. No, I think it's just, as somebody who grew up in Northwest Indiana, where we did have a lot of railroads. Now I'm in Indianapolis, where we have basically none. I mean, well, there's CSX that goes through Indianapolis, and that's basically it. Most of us don't see trains on a daily basis unless you fire up, you can fire a virtual rail fan and watch trains all day long. But
right.
I think anymore it's from a certain point of view, I like watching them because I'm an investor and I own stock in a lot of these railroads. So seeing them moving the freight, I'm like, okay, there's a dividend right there, and from that standpoint, I don't know. I think it's just it's one of the few hobbies where you do have to, or you can end up with a whole weird set of skills. You got to be able to be an electrician, you got to be a carpenter, you got to be a structural engineer, an artist, a painter, all of those sorts of things. There's very few hobbies where you get that wide range of Well, I don't know if they're practical skills, but they're certainly skills.
Well, I think they are. I think they are. I think they translate into that. I think that the model railroading hobby is, I think it gives people, modelers, I think for the newbies as well, I think it gives them confidence in knowing that they can do something, whether, regardless of what it is, it's a 4x8 piece of plywood or a T-track module thing. It instills a bit of confidence that, hey, this can be done. I can do it. And through, you can pick it up and, continue with it. And and as long as you're, yeah, are we going to make mistakes? Absolutely.
Always redo them.
Right.
I mean, I already had to do that in one of the spots in my layout in the upper staging yard. I thought I could get by with, one pair of turnouts, and after I started using, I'm like, no, I really need a double. I found a double crossover, and so I've already replaced, reworked part of my railroad, and it's still being built. But after you run it a little bit, it's like, okay, well, this didn't work out. Yeah, you do have to tear it out. You have to redo it, but the new version is a lot better.
Right.
My initial track work, we don't look at how the tracks are lined up in the upper staging yard. We look at the bottom one because they're nice and straight.
Right. Exactly.
Didn't work so well. So
Exactly. It's like you lay the track down and then you say, oh, this is really going to work out well. And then you say to yourself, after you start running a train, you go, what's that track for?
Exactly. And I've had a little bit of that. I mean, there were some things that I put down. I thought, well, this is what I can probably use it for. But then once I actually went through the exercise of putting a operations plan in, it's like, okay, well, I've got, I was looking at all the trains. I'm like, I've got too much power. I have too many engines here.
Yeah.
I have all these engines that I've acquired over, 30 years. I'm like, I don't need them. So off to Facebook for sale. And, now I've trimmed my power roster down a bit.
Yeah.
I know that these trains need, trains of this length need 2 engines to get up my helix. I was like, okay, well, that kind of sets, how much power you need, how many trains are going to be, and how many miscellaneous engines you need. So it's like, okay, well, I don't need 60 engines. I need a lot less than that. So,
it was interesting when Tom, John Farrington, John of 2618 YouTube channel, were talking about their layouts. They was, especially Tom, he does the Georgia Northern, and he was saying how when he specifically did the Georgia Northern, that there were a lot of stuff that came out that he, like he wanted to buy, but it didn't fit into the scheme of the route. So he had to let it go, and say, as much as I'd like to purchase it, I can't because it doesn't fit in doing in the scheme of it.
well,
When he was doing the layout himself, that there was a lot of stuff that he had to, let go. Like it's not like you just said, you had an abundance of power, motor power. So he had to do that. He had to weed through.
but at the same time, rule number 1 is it's my railroad. So there is I do have one of the beautiful Rapido Royal Hudson Canadian Pacific engines with a string of old style Canadian passenger cars.
Nice.
That's a heritage train. It runs. Right. I have a Deutsche Bundesbahn, the German Federal Railways, one of their what was called a Class 103 engines, one of the most beautiful engines ever built, and I have a string of cars to go with that. It's a factory, it's not going to run all the time, but I really love that engine, so I found a place for it. It's not going to run all the time, but at least I can still have it. It will still make the it might make a fan trip every other session just to throw things off, having this big long passenger train snaking through the road. It's you can do whatever you want to with it. If you want to be that strict to the prototype, okay, that's fine. If you want to be, somebody in the chat talk about proto-lancing, I think that's where a lot of people fall into. Because it's like, no, they're not going to represent everything exactly, There are towns that are going to be on my railroad that probably don't have any rail served industries, but they're in the right general area. It's close enough.
Yeah, John 2618 says, I collect steam locals that wouldn't even fit on my layout.
Mm-hmm.
And says, I'm definitely proto-Lance.
Yeah.
I could not be that deliberate.
Right.
Like that. So, Eric, I want to thank you very much for being on the show tonight. It was very interesting, and for taking time out of your very busy work schedule and stuff like that. I know that you work a full-time job as well as part-time as a paramedic, and I just want to thank you for being on the show and just discussing this. Eric Smith is the editor of the Dispatch's Office, the official journal of the Operation Special Interest Group. And if you want, his email address is editor@opsig, opsig.org. And the website is www.opsig.org as well. And you can find additional information on the magazine as well as their digital. Their magazine dues are 4 issues per year, and they're $25 for the hard copy, which I'm holding in my hand, and USA, $35 in Canada, and $45 everywhere else. Or you can do the electronic magazine PDF file download for $10 per year, US, Canada, and everywhere else. I would recommend getting both of them because it's a well-designed magazine, well-written magazine, and well-put-together magazine.
Yep. Let me offer one quick clarification.
Okay.
If you pay for if you're in the U.S. and you get the $25 a year, you get the digital as well. It's
okay.
Benefit of membership.
Nice.
So everybody who gets the magazine has access to all of the entire digital catalog. And if you're paying essentially we look at it as you're paying extra for the print and the mailing. So you will get the digital copy prior to the print one showing up. So no, it's not an either or. You get both. So,
okay. All right. Great. That's
like I said, if you're looking to minimize your expenses, $10 a year, you get 4 issues of the magazine electronically. If you like having a print copy, then it's $25 in the U.S. So,
all right. Well, thank you so much, Eric. I greatly appreciate you being on the show.
I appreciate the invitation, Bill. Thanks for letting us promote the organization. Again, if you have any questions, editor@opsig.org. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay, thank you. Again, on the 19th, that's a Thursday, the 19th November, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Johnny's Train Talk Show. That's where you, the community, can come in and sit down at the table with John and bring in bag and also talk about anything that's going on in your model railroad. If you have anything that you need troubleshooted, electronics, rolling stock, whatever it is that you need, we can handle everything except manual problems, financial problems, and anything else. But if it's related to model railroad, you're the guy to go to. Model Railroading Live, the #1 model railroad in the world. Railroad Empires, How We Build Them, comes on with their second episode of season 2. They will have Robert Holman on doing commercial track as well as hand laid track. And then yours truly will come back on November 25th of Who's Big Bill Talking to Fred Weil. In the meantime, I'd like to send my apologies to Rod Stewart. So Rod Stewart, we do apologize with this segment, but we were at a time talking with Eric Smith from the Dispatch's Office. So we'll have to get you. In the meantime, take care, God bless, and we'll see you guys on the radio. Bye-bye.